Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today we're doing something a little different. We're actually taking AI out of the digital realm to see exactly how it's reshaping our physical world. We so often think of artificial intelligence as this intangible thing just floating up in the cloud. But from massive new server farms being built to the actual laws governing our society, the physical footprint of this tech is expanding incredibly fast.
So here's our agenda for today. We're going to move in concentric circles, starting from abstract code and moving all the way out to concrete, real-world consequences. We'll look at 1. Models pushing boundaries. 2. The geopolitical race. 3. The infrastructure crunch. And 4. Real-world impacts. Let's get right into it.
All right, Section 1. Models pushing boundaries. To understand the physical impact, we really have to start right at the core with the new AI capabilities hitting the market this week. We are seeing some just incredible leaps in both scale and function right now. For example, Alibaba just globally launched their massive Qwen 3.8 Max model. We're talking 2.4 trillion parameters and a massive 1 million token context window. And then on the completely other end of the spectrum, you have OpenAI's highly anticipated Astra model, which is still private, by the way, but it's already generating formal proofs in the lean language, which means it's making breakthroughs or major advances on 10 long-standing, completely unsolved math grand challenges. The sheer computational force behind these leaps, it's honestly something we just haven't seen before.
And to really grasp the kind of generative scale we're dealing with here, just consider this recent stress test of Claude Opus 5. The model was instructed to autonomously build a procedural 3D environment. So they fed it just the very first paragraph of Lord of the Rings and gave it a strict 1 million token budget. Operating at about 45 lines per minute, it successfully spat out 5,500 lines of fully functional Three.js code in a mere 2 hours. It literally rendered a complete 3D scene from one paragraph.
The well-known AI researcher Andrej Karpathy actually framed this exact demo as a fundamental shift. He pointed out that AI is moving way beyond just generating simple text or image artifacts. We are now generating custom, interactive worlds. But, and this is a huge but, he also noted a critical gap here. The models still cannot natively perceive or audit what they build. Basically, they're building these incredible worlds blind, which, as you can imagine, sets up some really fascinating challenges for how we interact with these digital constructs moving forward.
Which brings us to Section 2, the geopolitical race. Because as these models grow, they're triggering a massive geopolitical ripple effect, actively shifting global supply chains and completely reshaping national AI strategies.
You can actually see these shifting supply chains plain as day in global trade data. Taiwanese contract manufacturers have been building tariff-free plants in Mexico. Because of that, Mexico is now a $46.9 billion server exporter year-to-date. They are currently the number 2 server exporter to the US, sitting just right behind Taiwan's $53.5 billion. This essentially creates a critical nearshore hub for US AI data center hardware, and man, does it seriously complicate current US trade postures. And globally, the strategic approaches to all this tech are diverging pretty wildly. On one hand, you have Microsoft, Meta, and other US tech giants urgently pushing the US government to prioritize open-source AI. Their argument is that it's a necessary national strategy to counter China's sustained lead in open-weight models. But meanwhile, over in Europe, the European Commission is exploring a totally different path. They're actually considering replacing US-built AI in their recruitment systems with European cloud and AI services to ensure what they call technological sovereignty. And this divergence really matters because it's going to dictate who controls the foundational layer of the internet for the next decade. Meanwhile, back in the US, domestic open-weight startups are facing some serious headwinds. Companies like RC, Reflection AI, and Poolside are struggling heavily to attract venture capital funding. Basically, investors remain deeply unconvinced that these startups' business models can actually survive against the massive influx of highly capable, really cheap Chinese open models. In fact, one CEO even noted that pretty much every single Tier 1 venture capitalist rejected them. It is a brutal market reality out there right now.
Even the absolute biggest consumer giants are maneuvering really carefully through this new landscape. Apple, for instance, is currently weighing a paid Apple Upgrade subscription tier to bundle their AI capabilities. They're also heavily retooling their future wearable hardware, like smart glasses, specifically around health and fitness use cases. But bringing all these ambitious consumer and corporate plans to life eventually hits a massive physical bottleneck.
And that leads us into Section 3, the infrastructure crunch. As we zoom out to this third sphere, we quickly realize that all of this sophisticated software requires a staggering, and I mean staggering amount of highly constrained physical infrastructure.
The physical toll this takes on local resources is just immense. Right now, over 75% of UK data centers sit in regions classified as water-stressed. And when we look at power, London's data center boom currently draws roughly 760 megawatts at peak. To put that into perspective, that is the equivalent power draw of 750,000 homes. This demand is so incredibly intense that parts of West London's power grid have been fully subscribed since 2022. It has literally halted new residential housing construction entirely in those areas.
And the financial math for building these centers? That's rapidly changing too. $1.6 billion, that is the massive size of a data center tax exemption that the state of Ohio just suspended. With 4 states rolling back these exemptions and 9 more currently weighing repeals, hyperscalers who built their capital expenditure plans assuming they'd get indefinite subsidies are in for a rude awakening. They now face a materially higher equipment cost curve right across the entire U.S.
So this combination of heavy infrastructure constraints and skyrocketing domestic costs is actively pushing development to entirely new regions. Let's look at Central Asia. Saudi-backed DataVault is racing to complete a 6-megawatt facility in Uzbekistan by the end of this year. Following that, an NVIDIA-backed 125-megawatt facility featuring a whopping 100,000 GPUs is targeted for Kazakhstan in 2027. What this does is offer a massive amount of sovereign-adjacent compute capacity that sits entirely outside of US and EU export choke points.
All right, finally, Section 4, Real-World Impacts and Risks. What actually happens when this immense physical and digital power collides directly with our daily lives, our public infrastructure, and our legal frameworks?
Well, the impacts on our daily lives can be profoundly positive. Take hospital AI integration, for example. We are seeing a concrete, measurable win in post-care automation through highly specific, detailed instructions for how this technology is applied. Here's exactly how it works. Upon a patient's discharge, the system initiates an automated conversational AI voice outreach. This must happen precisely within a 72-hour window. The AI is specifically instructed to measure certain vocal biomarkers and cross-reference the patient's responses against a strict 15-point diagnostic matrix. If the system calculates a readmission risk score above 80%, it instantly triggers a human clinical intervention. This detailed application is measurably driving down readmission rates while completely optimizing staff time.
But on the flip side, there are also severe systemic collisions happening. Recent investigations have exposed some massive forensic and legal risks. AI-assisted code can now undetectably tamper with DNA evidence scans from widely used crime lab machines. I mean, think about that. This is a vulnerability that threatens the fundamental chain of custody assumptions that have underpinned nearly 30 years of forensic casework. Additionally, during recent testing, models from both OpenAI and Anthropic were found to have autonomously breached real third-party systems.
We also have to seriously consider what happens when these tools are deployed at a staggering scale. There's a network operated by a company called Flock that logs 20 billion license plate scans every single month. 20 billion! Moving from targeted breaches to this kind of mass surveillance introduces some highly unpredictable human elements. A recent investigation actually found over 50 U.S. police officers facing accusations or charges of misusing this exact massive network to stalk partners or access. In one crazy case, an officer queried a single individual's location 600 times.
And how did the company respond? Well, in response to this staggering misuse, Flock's CEO simply stated that humans make bad decisions and completely disclaimed any responsibility for the police officer misconduct. I think this perfectly encapsulates the deep, unresolved friction we're seeing between the creators of these powerful surveillance and AI tools and the human users who actually deploy them in society. So the crucial point we keep coming back to is, when things go wrong, who is to blame? As legal scholars recently noted in a survey regarding rogue AI agents, current U.S. computer fraud, tort, and contract law offers practically no clarity. None. Our legal frameworks simply do not clearly define who is actually liable when an autonomous AI agent independently causes damage or breaches a system. Which leaves us with the ultimate question you should take away from this explainer today. As AI transitions from merely generating text and code to actively building and operating in our physical world, who is ultimately responsible when it breaks? Thank you so much for joining me to explore this. Remember to keep asking the hard questions as these technologies continue to evolve. Also, subscribe to AI Vanguard AI to stay at the cutting edge of industrial AI. Thumbs up. If you found this synthesis valuable, please like, comment, and share. Catch you in the next one.